let's move on down the agenda and actually get into the topic at hand. And really the macro topic is, how do we activate our audience? What are the things that we need to do to get our target customer aware that we exist and excited to do business with us when they have a problem that we can solve for them? And last month we covered half of the items, and then this month we're going to cover the other half. And I just wanted to do a real quick recap. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick just so we can look at our demand gen framework here. Let me share my screen real quick. This is our demand gen framework, and you can see activate your audience is that second blue pillar, and that's what we've been focusing on. And so when you think about how do we do demand generation the right way, it always starts with planning. We got to understand who our target customer is, what really matters to them, what are they trying to accomplish, how do we message to them correctly. That's really the first step of the process. And then from there, we can go and activate our audience, which is, now that we know who they are and what they care about, let's go hang out where they hang out to learn, and let's be a part of that conversation. And that's really what we've been talking about the last 2 months. So we're going to dig deep on the second part of that today. But just to finish out the go-to-market demand gen framework here, the goal of activate your audience really is about getting people, after they're aware that you exist and the problems that you solve, to get them over to your website. And the reason we want them over to your website is this is where you're going to establish authority and empathy, and basically qualify that, let them know that you're qualified to solve the problems that they have. And not only that you're qualified, but you care, like you really want to help them solve this problem. And that's really what we mean by that, establish authority. And we believe your website is the best place to do that. So you can activate your audience in social media, for example, but really we need to get folks over to your website eventually so that we can communicate that we have the authority, we are qualified to solve that problem for them. And then that last pillar is nurture relationships. And that's really important, because in the world of B2B, we can't control when that buyer is going to be ready to buy. That's really up to them. So we have to stay top of mind, and we have to nurture relationships so that when they are ready to buy, they think of our companies first. And so as we're talking about activate your audience, what we really want to do is go to those watering holes where our customers are going to connect with peers and to learn about their industry and really stay up to date on how to solve problems. And that's what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, since I'm already sharing screen, so you can kind of see where we are here. And so what is the goal of activating our audience? It's, we've talked about driving traffic to our websites, but we also want to generate awareness, but not just generate awareness of our brand, but generate awareness of our point of view on how we can solve problems. So one of the things we coach our clients on when they're thinking about their message or what they want to communicate in this activate your audience phase, it's really help your buyer understand what's broken in their business, like your point of view on what's broken in their business, why that's happening in their business, how you would fix it if you were working with them, and then finally evidence or proof that you can do it. Like if they followed your prescription, if you will, that their problem would go away and they would have a better business. And so when we think about activating our audience, it's not just getting your brand out there and make them aware of your logo. It really is communicating your point of view on how you can solve their problem, and then ultimately driving them over to your website. So some keys to success related to that is, one, we've got to have a clear understanding of who our customer is, what messages are really important to them, and content that resonates. That's a big challenge that we see B2B struggle with today, is they've got a lot to say, but they don't know how to say it in a way that your customers actually care about. And so if you're struggling getting B2B marketing to work, or any of these challenges or channels that we're talking about today, and activate your audience, it may be that your message just isn't entertaining enough. And when I say entertaining, I'm not talking about funny or entertaining like that, but useful, informative, valuable. Those are the things that are going to get the attention of your buyer. So you've got to have really great content, and then you've got to have a plan to distribute that content. So for example, you may have a great blog that has really useful information that's going to help the buyer. But if you're not getting that blog distributed out into these activate your audience channels like social media, then it's really not doing you any good. So you've got to write that blog, and then you've got to figure out, how do I chop that blog up into bite-sized, channel relevant pieces of information that I can share in this activate your audience phase to really get the attention of my buyer, entertain them, get them excited about how we can help them, and then ultimately drive them over to our website. So that's kind of a quick overview. Some of the channels that we looked at last month, and I'm just covering these really fast, is we looked at SEO and B2B SEO, and just a couple of quick things just to recap on that. One is you need to have an organic and a paid strategy, right? So we can't expect search engine optimization to accomplish all of our goals, because really what we found in the world of B2B is that SEO is a great tactic for top of the funnel. People are in research mode. This is where your blogs are really going to come into play. Those long tail terms are going to rank well based on blog content that you write, that's going to drive those top of the funnel buyers over to your website. And then paid is really about capturing demand. So you want to focus your paid strategy relying on more of the bottom of the funnel, what we say work at hand. What are they trying to accomplish, and how does your solution help them accomplish that? And what are the words they might type into Google to figure that out? Those are your bottom of the funnel terms that you really need to focus on paid, for a couple of reasons. One, it's really hard to get good ranking organically for those terms. But at the same time, you don't want to buy all of your terms, those long tail terms you can get there organically with SEO. You don't want to buy those terms. You want to get there through organic methods, and only focus your paid on those bottom of the funnel terms. That's going to keep your costs down and really cause your cost per lead to be more in line with where you're wanting to go. And so we gave you some great resources there. You can see that will help you kind of think through that. And then social was the other thing that we covered last time, which is, how do we leverage social media as a channel to activate our audience? And there was two things that we talked about primarily. One is that we've got an objective at top of the funnel, which is really to communicate to answer the question, rather, what do we want our buyer to know, right? So we want them to know that we exist, but what are the key things that this top of the funnel, ideal customer profile person, what do we want them to know? If we could guarantee that we could get our message in front of them, what are the 5 or 6 things that we really want them to know about our business? And that's really the content that we need to be producing and distributing for top of the funnel. And then when we get to middle of the funnel, we have to ask ourselves a different question, which is, what do we want them to do? So what do we want them to know at the top? Middle of the funnel, what do we want them to do? And that's usually creating momentum for the buyer. And it doesn't always necessarily mean getting them to become a lead, right? We ultimately all want pipeline and opportunities and sales, but sometimes the answer to that question, what do we want them to do? Maybe, well, I want them to come to my website, or I want them to attend this event, or I want them to join my community, or I want them to read this case study. But it's important when you're building out a social media strategy from an activate your audience perspective, it's, what is the next thing I want them to do? Now that I know that they're exposed to my brand and they understand these things about my business, these are the things I want them to do next. That's how you create momentum for your buyer. So let's jump into the next topic here, which is influencers. And when we think about influencers, we're not talking about the Kardashians here, right? That's not what we're looking for in the world of B2B marketing. What we're looking for are the people that really have the ear of our customer. Who are our customers going to learn about new trends or things that they can do, quick wins, things like that, getting their questions answered? Those are the things that we need to be. Those are the types of influencers that we're really trying to connect with. And so a question for you guys that you can chat to Andrea as I go through kind of what I want to share with you related to that is, I'm just curious, how many people have an influencer marketing tactic or approach to your go-to-market right now? How many people are trying to leverage influencers in some form or fashion to create awareness and to activate your audience? Just chat something into Andrea like, yes, we are, or we're not, or want to, or what are some of the challenges that you may have seen in just trying to activate your audience? Would love to hear from you on that. So as we're thinking about influencer marketing, One of the first things I already mentioned, it's not the Kardashians that we're talking about, taking pictures with our products or our logo. Really, I think our best influencers are actually our employees. Now, I've got a whole section after this section on employee advocacy and why that's important. So I'm going to save a lot of that for later. But quite frankly, if you're looking for a quick hit on influencer marketing, you need to be thinking about how do you get your employees active in social media and engaging with your customers. That's huge. But beyond that, there are other types of influencers that we can definitely tap into as part of our go-to-market. One of them would be social influencers. And so as you have probably become aware, platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, especially in the B2B world, have really taken off. And I would say this is a big time since COVID. I think as people started dealing with the pandemic and working from home and going to less events, what's happened is they're starting to lean on these types of platforms for peer connection and to stay up to date. And so this is a great opportunity for folks to get out there and become influencers and to share their point of view about topics. And so what we're seeing is that this is really just blown up on sites like LinkedIn, and there's an opportunity for us to connect with influencers, again, those folks that have the ear of our buyer, and start to engage with them with their posts and social media. And so what we want to do is build community with these influencers. We want to build community with the folks that are liking and commenting on these influencer posts. And we also want to contribute to those conversations. And so one of the things we've been saying lately is comments are content. So if you've got an influencer in your space that is got a pretty good following, and when they post something on LinkedIn, for example, they're getting a lot of likes and a lot of comments. If you can start engaging with those comments or getting people within your company, subject matter experts, employees, et cetera, to actually dialogue in that comment thread, you're actually creating really good content that's going to activate your audience, create awareness, and ultimately drive traffic to your website. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a mind blower, but when I'm talking about influencers, especially social influencers, those could actually be your competitors. So in a perfect world, you would find influencers that are out there that are active, that have a good following, that are not necessarily direct competitors to you. And that's great. And certainly you're going to find those. But I'm telling you, in the world of social activation, it's okay to jump on a competitor's post and share your point of view. It is really about social media. And I'm telling you, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, for example. I'm commenting on competitors' posts all the time. So we've got to kind of break this mindset that competitors are bad. When it comes to social influencers, we need to have kind of this frenemy point of view, and that is it's okay to engage with them in social media. But what I wanted to do is actually share with you an easy way to find these influencers, because a lot of B2B companies say to me, hey, I hear what you're saying, but how do I find people that I can, kind of drift off of, if you will, and engage with their content? So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so so most of you guys are familiar with LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you realize that it is a search engine that searches not only people, but all types of other things, including content. And so in this example here, I've just typed in the key phrase 3PL. We're actually talking to a company right now that's in third-party logistics. And so I'm using this as an example. But if I wanted to find influencers in the third-party logistics space, I would, number one, need to know what are the words and terms that are used in that space. And in this case, 3PL is one of those terms. And so you can do a search in LinkedIn, and then this little search bar comes down here, this ability to filter out your results. And you can sort by all different types of content. And you can see here that I've got posts set up as what I'm searching for. And then you can even change, the past month, past week, last 24 hours. I found that when you're looking for influencers, it's better to do a bigger data sort, if you will, or look through more content. And then you can even sort by top match or latest. And I like doing top match because that's going to give the LinkedIn algorithm an opportunity to present to you really, who are those people that kind of jump to the top? And so when you do a search like this with your key phrases, and these could be the same key phrases that you're using on your pay-per-click campaigns, for example, you're going to start seeing folks that show up and actual content that shows up. And so a couple of things you can do here is one, you can follow these people. You can even go to their profile and set a notification on their profile so that you could get an alert every time that they post something. You can comment if you feel like this is something that you have a point of view that you'd like to share. You can comment on it or have somebody on your team comment on it. You can also look at all of the people that commented on the post, or have somebody on your sales team do this and start building community with the people that are active on this post. And I would submit to you, you want to do all three, right? You want to find these influencers, you want to engage in conversations that they're having, and then you want to build community with the people that are also engaging with that influencer's post. You would be amazed, like when I go out and share comments or share a comment on somebody else's post, how many of my followers will also go and like that post, because it's making my followers aware that I'm engaging with this other post. And the same thing's going to happen for you. And so, you know, a very easy step into influencer marketing for B2Bs is simply to go do this kind of search in LinkedIn, and then look for these influencers and start engaging with content that way. Who out there is doing who out there, do you see anybody that's out there trying? I see Wendy, you said you're trying influencer marketing. Ryan, you said you're trying. Romy, that's good. You know, it's really challenging, you know, to find influencers kind of the old school way, but this is a real easy kind of low barrier to entry, because there's nothing keeping you other than sweat equity from engaging with influencers like this. So I'm going to move on to the next type of influencer, which I think is a really great one. Another easy one. It's a little bit more challenging. So I'm kind of going from easy to hard here. You know, easy is find people in social media. This next one is a little bit harder, which is being a podcast guest or having subject matter experts, you know, on your team start guesting on podcasts. And this is huge. There are, in the United States, I think the last number I saw, over 2 million podcasts that are out there today. And, you know, I know the number one, I think most popular type of podcast right now are the true crime podcasts, but there are tons of B2B podcasts that are out there today. And it's a great opportunity to connect your subject matter experts with these podcast hosts. They have an audience. They are a watering hole where our buyers are going to stay informed, and they're hungry for content. These podcast hosts are looking for people that they can interview. And so on top of that, the last stats that I saw were that over half of the population of the United States is actually listened to a podcast, and nearly 30% of the population of the United States is listening to a podcast at least once a week. I can tell you, for me personally, I'm listening to about 4 or 5 different podcasts a week. And so it's really helpful to go and get your subject matter experts on the podcast circuit, if you will. And if you'll scroll down on the agenda, I'm going to share my screen again here. Got to find everybody first. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again and jump down to this resource right here called Listen Notes. You can see that right here. And if you click on that, it will actually take you over to the Listen Note website. And again, it's a search engine, but what's cool about Listen Notes is it's a search engine of just podcasts. So if you're wanting to get on the podcast guesting circuit, you can go about it a couple of ways. One way is you can look for people that are influencers in your space and just simply do a search for them, and it's going to show you all the different podcasts that they've been a guest on. So for example, just kind of taking the social media influencer step one, you know, if you were to go look in my industry for who are the top influencers in B2B marketing, this guy named Dave Gerhardt is going to pop up because he's a big influencer. He's the former CMO of Drift, and he's got his own media company now. And so he's out there and posting on LinkedIn pretty regularly. He's also guesting on podcasts. So you can go to Listen Notes and type in Dave Gerhardt, and here's all of the different podcasts that he's been a guest on. And so these are now podcast opportunities for you, potentially, if you're in my space, to reach out to the host and see if you can also be a guest on that podcast. Another way to leverage listen notes would be to simply type in a key phrase, demand generation, for example. And you can see all the different podcasts that pop up where demand generation was a topic. And so another great way to activate your audience with influencers is by leveraging podcasts and being a guest. Now, ultimately, I think an advanced feature of that would be to start your own podcast. And depending on how this eventually goes, the Demand Gen Jam session, that's one of the things we're keeping in our back pocket, is maybe we'll turn this into a podcast at some point down the road. A key thing about podcast guesting, though, it's a little bit more challenging than just commenting on an influencer's post in LinkedIn or Twitter, because you've got time to respond and think. What works better in podcast guesting is two things. One, you've got to have a really good framework for teaching something quickly. Typically podcasts are 30 minutes to an hour. And so your subject matter expert has got to have, that key story that you want to deliver out into the market that he's going to share over and over and over again, and have that kind of down pat. That's really going to be good teaching moments that are going to give people actionable things. So you don't want him to just, or that him or her to go out and be on a podcast and just kind of talk off the top of their head, answer questions. You want them to be delivering a message that's on point. And then the other thing is, at the end of every podcast, the host always asks, hey, how can people learn more? And so this is a great opportunity to create momentum for you by having a call to action that podcast guest might communicate to the audience about, hey, join our community, follow us on social, get this free resource. So be prepared to have a great call to action that subject matter expert can share at the end of that podcast. The next thing under influencers that I wanted to cover is just co-promotion. So every industry has media companies, if you will. Maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's a website, maybe it's a trade organization. And we found that just, a great way to get your message out there is to partner with these other organizations that can help you co-promote your business. When we do our webinars that we do twice a year, like the one that we've got coming up next month, we do partner with a newsletter company that has, I think, 250,000 B2B marketers in their subscription base, and we'll actually promote our webinar there. So that's a couple of times a year that we'll actually go and run a co-promotion with them. So that's just another example of how to tap into folks that have the ear of your buyer. The last one is really journalists. So and this is a PR function, I know, but there's a great little resource. You'll see it. I'm going to share my screen again here. You'll see it at the bottom of the agenda here. Let me share my screen one more time. So right here, it's this HARO, H-A-R-O. And this is help a reporter out is what the HARO stands for. And I'm not going to click on the link, but it's a great place where you can go and subscribe to the platform. And then journalists that are looking for experts around a topic that you may be a subject matter expert on or have subject matter experts, they will connect you with those. And so it's a great way of helping out a reporter and getting coverage. In fact, a lot of PR companies use tools like this. This is a free tool. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as a way of connecting with journalists. So Andrea, I'm going to pause. I know we've covered a lot here on influencers, but do you have any questions or anything that's come out of the chat while we've been talking through this?
Yeah, actually, Ryan, if you want to unmute yourself, Ryan had a question about some of the topics you were just going over, Paul.
So, one of the things I've looked at is some of we're in the manufacturing space and looking at manufacturing influencers, and to get posted on them costs money. And I thought, I don't know. I wasn't really expecting that. I know everybody's got to pay the bills, but
right. Yeah, I think it's all over the place, Ryan. Like if I were going to spend money for influencer marketing, I would start with like a newsletter like we do, where, we sponsor this particular company's newsletter whenever we have a webinar coming, and we get some good placement in their emails and on their website. And that's great because they're their audience is our audience. And so I'm happy to spend the money for that. From an influencer, like a personality or an individual, I would say step one is, go just engage with their content in social media. One of my biggest competitors out there is a guy named Chris Walker, and I love Chris Walker. His content's amazing, and he'll post something on LinkedIn and get 1,000 likes, and so I'm always on top of that as well. Whenever he's sharing content on LinkedIn, I'm always there liking his content. I'm sharing my point of view about the topic that he covered. And I'm also building community with the people that liked and engaged with his content. And it cost me nothing except time. And so I would do those things first. And Ryan, I know you're doing some of that because I see you out there on LinkedIn pretty regularly. But I would start there before I'd start writing a check. But ultimately, when you write a check, it's got to come down to cost per acquisition and your goals there. So just like when we run our webinar, twice a year, we've got very set goals on what we want our cost per registration and cost per attendee to be. And whenever we try something new, like this newsletter sponsorship, we make sure that we achieve those objectives. And if not, we try something different. So hopefully that helped. Did that answer your question, Ryan?
It did. Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Any other questions, Andrea?
Nope, that was the one for now.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on down the agenda and cover really the next subtopic under activate your audience, which is employee advocacy. And I'm even going to throw in social selling here because they're very close cousins. And so I can't encourage you enough to start thinking about, as I even talked about, your best influencers are your employees, that it now is the time to start thinking about, how do I get my employees active in social media? And there's a lot of things that we can do to get them active in social media. But, I think right now is the time that you've really got to be serious about, figuring out a way to get your folks excited about this. The goal really with employee advocacy, if you will, is all those activation goals that we talked about. It's, creating awareness for your brand, it's driving traffic to your website, but there's this added layer that you can get to when you get your employees active in social media. And that is really getting your brand and your employees to be seen as the go-to resource for your target audience when they have any questions about what's going on in your industry. And the reason why this is working so well, it's kind of goes back to what I talked about at the beginning of the session. And that is that since COVID, our buyers are going to places like LinkedIn and Twitter and social media to try to stay informed, right? We're going to less events. This is a way that we're compensating for that. And if you can be seen as this go-to resource, then that's going to help you win more business. And the beautiful thing about employee advocacy is it's more feet on the street, right? So if you're a brand and you're publishing something on LinkedIn every day, you've got one company page that people can see. And the people that are following your company page, a subset of them are going to see your content. But if you've got 25 employees or even 10 employees out there active every day in social media, you've just amplified the impact that you can have. And you've also humanized your brand in a big, big way. And so when you think about employee advocacy, what you want them to do is obviously share your content, right? So we want to get our employees to take content that you might share on your LinkedIn company page or social company page. And you want them to share that on their personal profile, but you don't want to stop there. You want them to share it, and you want to give them the confidence and encouragement to share their point of view. So it's not just using their point of presence as a distribution point, but rather encourage them and educate them on, hey, share your point of view. What are your 2 cents as it relates to this? You also want to encourage them to share their own content, right? They don't want to just be a rinse and repeat of what's going on your LinkedIn company page. You want them out there sharing their own points of view and their own just generated content on their own. You want them engaging with influencers as well. So, finding people that they want to be in community with and sharing content or sharing commenting, sorry, I got a little tongue twisted there, sharing comments on those folks' content as well. Because remember, we talked about earlier, commenting is content. And so if you can empower them to, hey, not only share content with their point of view, but also find these influencers and comment on their posts as well, and then ultimately build community with folks that are active in social media. If for sales, you want to take one extra step. So you want them to do all the things that I just talked about, but you also, and I can't believe more B2B companies aren't doing this, but you want your sales reps to reach out to every marketing qualified lead that you generate. And I know sales reps only want to handle, sales reps love stuff teed up on a silver platter. They only want to work on deals that are ready to close, and that's fine. But one thing that you should ask your sales reps to do is every time you generate a marketing qualified lead, have them reach out to that marketing qualified lead on LinkedIn, have them thank them for whatever they did to become a marketing qualified lead, attend an event, download a gated ebook, whatever, and just simply reach out to them and say, hey, thanks for doing that. My name's Paul. I'm your rep for your area. Let me know if you have any questions about that thing you did or any questions about our services in the future. And that's it. Just be done with it. But that's a huge step in the right direction. Another thing to think about with employee advocacy is we want our employees to be involved, but it's not going to work unless you can get leadership involved. Honestly, I believe leaders need to be the ones that are setting the example. And this is a bit of a mindset shift, if you will, that most companies are going to have to go through. I've talked to so many CEOs that really believe that being active on LinkedIn is a waste of time. And I tell them that nothing could be farther from the truth. They need to be active in social media because this is where the world is going. This is how brands are getting found online today. They're not going to Google as much anymore. They're discovering things through peer groups and peer communities, and they need to be active in social media because that sets the tone for the entire company and also gives, a much better opportunity for brand awareness at the C-suite level than an employee can do. One thing I share with CEOs when I hear them kind of push back on that, I say something like this. I say, hey, how cool would it be for you to give a mini keynote speech to your very best customers and prospects every single day of the week? And usually when I say that, they look back at me, their eyes get a little bit bigger and they're like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And I'm like, that's exactly what you can do on LinkedIn every single day. You can give a mini keynote speech every single day to your best customers and prospects. And that usually gets them at least interested to hear about next steps. But the key point is employee advocacy has to start at the top. I can tell you, I spend 30 to 45 minutes a day, every day on LinkedIn as the CEO of Indie Digital, really modeling that for my employees. And a tremendous amount of our client new business and opportunities come directly from the work that I'm doing in social media. So you got to get those leadership folks, that C-suite engaged in this as well. And just kind of thinking through how can we get our employees excited about it? It's all education, right? You've got to establish a good culture. You've got to train them on how, a good personal brand is good for for them personally. It's not just good for your business, but it's also good for them. You've got to let them know that they've got the freedom to share what they want to share. They own their personal profile. As businesses, we don't own that. We can encourage it, we can celebrate it, we can help them, but ultimately it's their profile. And so give them the tools, celebrate wins, make it easy, provide training, develop a policy, create swipe files or content that they can share and give them tools that make it easy. One thing that I'm looking at doing at Vindy, we haven't started this yet, is actually having office hours where I can, have some set time on my calendar where anybody in the company can come and book that time with me, and we can look over their LinkedIn profile. I can coach them on, what's working for me in social media, just providing that extra support to let them know this is really important. And I think if you'll do that, if you can get the C-suite involved, you can show them, the employees, how this is good for them and give them the training and resources, then you can get this army of influencers out there really helping promote your brand. And it's going to make a big difference. And it'll make a bigger difference in 2023 than even, in 2022. So I've given you a great resource there at the bottom of the agenda. It's called Shield app. Most of the tools that are out there that give you data on engagement don't have the ability to share data on personal profiles on LinkedIn. Shield app is the only one that I've found. And so if you do start an employee advocacy program, Shield app would be a great tool to look at because it gives you the ability to really see the organic metrics, reach, clicks, activity, all that kind of stuff can come out of that tool. So employee advocacy, how many people are doing it? How many people feel like they're doing it great? Any questions related to employee advocacy? Andrea, I'm going to pass the baton over to you.
Yeah, we do have a few questions, Paul, and this kind of goes off of something you touched base a little bit on, but how do you motivate employees to get active on social? So something we get asked a lot is, should I compensate them? And one of the questions we had is there a way to gamify LinkedIn to get employees to use it more and share, like, and comment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the jury's still out on compensating. I can see pros and cons on both. I think what I would do, and Andrea, just so you know, I'm working on building out an employee advocacy program even for Vendy Digital, and I want to start with kudos and really just kind of promoting the people. And when I say promoting, not advancement, but just letting folks know what a great job that they're doing. So using just kind of personal accolades internally is a good starting point. And then the way I would gamify employee advocacy would be I would have a Slack channel, and this is what my plan is for Vendy Digital, is to have a Slack channel where we can celebrate wins. So if somebody posts something out there that gets a lot of reach or gets a lot of likes, that somebody could drop that in there and we could celebrate that together. I don't know about the folks that are on the call today, but Slack is a big part of our culture, and we use it to celebrate birthdays. And we're pretty much remote workforce, so it's a way of us, just extending our culture. And so that's one thing I would do, is just make sure that we have a place to celebrate each other's wins. And then one other thing that I wanted to mention, Andrea, that I forgot, which this kind of got me thinking about it, is if you have Slack, create a Slack channel just for promoting each other's posts. So every single time somebody on your team shares something on LinkedIn, have them go to Slack and just drop that link in LinkedIn, and then get the rest of the team to go and like it. We do that at Vendy Digital on my posts sometimes, and it really helps amplify the reach. So that's another great way to leverage Slack. So it looks like Romy has a question too. What are the components of an employee advocacy program? So that's a great question, Romy. So for sure, you've got to have training. So you need a policy and communication that you can hand out to employees that say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is why we need your help. Here's some things we would like you to do. Here's, some resources that you can put on your LinkedIn profile. Here's even some bio copy that you can consider for your LinkedIn profile. Here's, some actions that you can take to really engage employee advocacy well. Here's how we're going to reward people that do a good job or gamify it, whatever. But then you can even create a content plan just for your employees. And, maybe you start with a swipe file, which is kind of what we do at Vendy today. So when I have content that really takes off on LinkedIn, that gets moved over to a swipe file that the rest of the team can then leverage because they know it worked well. They can try it and, add their own little spin to it. But certainly having some content that's ready to go that they can tweak and play with would be helpful. And then having tools like Shield app to monitor results. We've got a tool at Vendy that we use to publish content called Vendy Amp. Which, for our team members that want to have content distributed and teed up for them, we can actually create a library for them. And that's one other thing that we do. So hopefully, Romy, that answered your question. Any other questions? If not, I'm looking at the clock. We've got 10 minutes left, and I've got one more topic. So I'm going to move on.
Go ahead, Paul.
All right. So the last topic is actually one that I'm really one of the most excited topics that I wanted to cover today, and that's this idea of community. And if you recall, what we're really doing is trying to activate our audience. So how do we get our information in front of our buyers, and how do we make them aware that we exist and the problems that we solve? And I can't tell you how excited I am about where community is going. We're kind of at the end of this Web 2.0 era, and you're starting to hear people talk about Web 3.0 and what does all that mean? And, at the same time, they start talking about Oculus and virtual reality. And yeah, that's all part of it. But I also believe that we're going to see this separation of platforms in a way of staying connected with our peer group. And so it's really key that we start thinking about how can we build a community of customers, prospects, influencers that we own and control. And that's one of the reasons why we made the shift out of the LinkedIn group for our Demand Gen Jammers. And we're going to retire that next month, as I mentioned, and we're going to move over to Networked because we feel so passionately that community is the future. At the same time, if you just think about the pressures that are going on in the world of B2B marketing and demand generation, the MQL is dying, right? We can't gate every piece of content to generate leads for our businesses anymore. That tactic is starting to retire. But at the same time, we have this need to know who we're selling to know who's in market, who are those buyers that we want to reach. And so in my mind, the answer is community. So, where the MQL would reveal, hey, here's somebody that gave us their information to get this guide or to get whatever. Now, where I think the world is going is instead of, giving me this information for this ebook, join our community. And when you join our community, not only are you going to have access to all of our resources and all of our events, but you're also going to have a peer group, a place where you can go and get your questions answered. And that's where I think the world's heading. And so that's why I added community to the list here, because it is a great way for us to activate our audience. Now, I want to give you some tactical things to think about here. And so a baby step would certainly be, instead of, if you feel like that's overwhelming, maybe go find some groups that you can already be a part of. So, a baby step would be go find active groups that are out there in your industry already and just start being a part of that community, or have people on your team be a part of that community. And the way that you do that is simply, start paying attention to the questions that are being asked in the community and start answering those questions and be a part of the conversation. I can tell you that I'm involved with 2 or 3 communities outside of the Demand Gen Jammers community. And I do that almost, certainly every week. I'm out there looking at the conversations that are going on, sharing my point of view when I feel like there's an appropriate question. And here's a little secret: a ton of the things that I share as a post on LinkedIn start as a question that I answered in a community. So I might be on somebody else's community. I see this question. I'm like, man, that's a great question. I've got something I want to share about that. I share the content related to that. I share my point of view related to that. And I'm like, man, that was really good. I'm going to turn that into a LinkedIn post. And so just like I've been saying in this whole session, comments are content. There's a great example of how that works for me. So, baby step is, start your own community. Then when you're ready, you might leverage something like Networked, which is what we're going to be moving our community to, and start building your own community. A couple of things to think about, though, that when you build a community, and this is where I've seen communities go wrong, is it has to be a no selling zone. This is not a place for us as businesses to promote our wares at all, right? Like, for example, if you've been following and if you've been a part of our community or been attending these sessions, you're not going to get a sales pitch from us ever, right? This is just an opportunity for our peer group to come together, to share thoughts, ask questions, get answers. And that's really what the spirit of community's got to be about. It's a no sales zone. We need to be human. We need to be helpful. We need to think like a concierge at a hotel. Right. When we have, when you go to a hotel, there's a concierge there. Their job isn't to sell us anything. Their job is to answer questions and point us in the right direction. That's what we need to be doing in our communities. And the key and the hard part that I'm finding is I'm trying to build out a community And one of the reasons why I'm moving over to network is that, it's hard to understand what customers really want and then to give it to them. This is where we really need to start thinking like a media company and not a B2B marketer, but rather a media company. What does my audience need? How can I serve them well? And then how can I package that up and deliver it in a format that helps and is useful to them? Going way back to the beginning of today's session, I mentioned that we have a new survey that's linked off the agenda. You'll see deeper questions. This is why it's new, because we are launching this new community. I really want to hear from you. What are the things that we can produce for you that would be helpful to you? And so that's a key part of establishing community. But, I would say for the latter half of 2022, definitely go find some communities that you can participate in. That's going to give you experience and make you familiar with what's going on. But I would start really thinking about, how can I build a community of my customers, prospects, and peers? And that's exactly what the Demand Gen Jammers group is for us. We've invited our clients. I know that we have clients even on the call today, former clients, new clients, prospects. They're all here. It's not a place to be sold. It's just a place for us to come together. And then the last thing to think about related to community is, I would look for, kind of goes back to influencer marketing, find partners that aren't necessarily competitors, but have something useful to say to your audience that also has an audience. And so maybe there's some cross promotion opportunities where you can get exposure to their group by giving them exposure to your group. For example, one of the things that we're thinking about with the Demand Gen Jammers group is going to all the MarTech providers and having them produce resources for us that would, not be pitch decks, but rather useful information that we could promote in our group in exchange for us doing something in their group. So you might see, for example, a MarTech provider have an agenda topic on one of our future Demand Gen Jam sessions, or do a guest post in our community or something like that. Another last piece is, it's not just about a discussion forum. I mean, that's what LinkedIn is. You can post something on LinkedIn and and get feedback back, but it's got to be more than that. It's got to be helpful. It's got to help people advance their career. I think you need to have job boards. You need to have resources, access to events. It really needs to feel VIP for the people that are a part of the community. And so, Andrea, I know we've got like 1 minute left. I'm going to pass the baton back to you. Any questions that popped up about community?
Yeah, I think one question to wrap that up, Paul, would be, we had some question about recommending any marketing communities to get involved with.
So that's a great one. So Dave Gerhardt has a great community called, if you go to exit5.com, his is a paid community. I think it's $10 a month or $15 a month. I'm a part of that community. That's the first one that jumps to my head. I know we're running out of time, so I will actually do a post in the Demand Gen Jammers group about some B2B marketing communities, and I think that would be a good post. So thanks for that question. I'm also working on a list of B2B marketing podcasts that I've been planning on doing a post about that for a couple of weeks. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So guys, one thing that I promise you is we'll always wrap at the top of the hour. Thank you guys for joining us. Remember, next month, we're not having a Demand Gen Jam session like this, but we're actually doing a webinar where we'll be teaching on, a B2B marketer's guide to just demand generation, and giving you guys some real practical things that you can do to get demand generation to the next level for you. So stay tuned for that. And then also stay tuned for instructions on how to migrate over to our new group on network. Super excited about that, and we'll keep you up to date. Other than that, you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of August. Take care, everybody. See ya.